So I'm very pleased to welcome our next speaker. She's going to give you even more of an overview of this WFA initiative you've been hearing about. This is Belinda Smith, the head of Global Marketing Intelligence for Electronic Arts. So let's see, make sure I get my, there we go. Okay, take it away.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Belinda Smith. I'm the new president of the Jennifer Gardner fan club. We meet on Wednesdays. That was such a good panel and a really great setup to some of the things we'll be talking about today. So along with Ben Jankowski of MasterCard, I co-lead the WFA cross-media measurement initiative. I want to start, because you're going to hear from a lot of people today who have been working pretty tirelessly, coming up on a year, on this initiative. And so I want my role to be just kind of a setup of how it was born, what the aim is, and where we're going. And so you can save all of your really tough questions for people who are not me, is what I'm trying to say. So essentially, I came into EA in 2017 to build out an in-house media buying group. After we did that, my group took over our agency relationships as well as media strategy planning and innovation. We spent, I think, in more than 35 countries last year. And as we think about planning internally, our biggest concern is how we can assess the health of our brands, which is to say, we, in some ways, are a DTC business. We're a very digital business. We have a lot of data. We've been really loud and proud about building our own internal MTA. But how do you assess how we're doing on FIFA and how relevant we are with the audiences we want to be in that brand? And to better answer that question and to build global plans that we thought were really great, we needed to know audience penetration. And which, from my perspective, after working at an agency focusing on programmatic, seemed like a really easy question. But it's not. It's actually completely impossible. And so we started thinking, like, how do we marry TV and digital? What does US versus UK versus Netherlands look like? How do we really assess our scale? And we didn't have a good answer for that. We had zero answers. And so then I began to talk to my peers at the WFA in similar places and found that a lot of people had these questions and didn't have really effective or elegant solutions to dealing with those challenges. Take that one step further, and there seemed to be a lot of working groups or support groups, I would even say, of people commiserating about how we solve this issue. And while I wanted to engage with each of those groups and each of those people and each of those organizations, I also had a full-time job, and it became really tough and impossible. So the WFA cross-media measurement initiative was really born out of many leaders within the WFA, within the WFA media board, bringing together some work that they were aware of, some work that they had participated in around this issue, and saying to the WFA, we need help, we need to solve this on a global level, and we need it as much as possible to reside in one place. And that's kind of how this initiative was born. Dramatic pause. Okay. Raise your hand if 3 to 5 years ago you would have thought you'd be in a room in 2020 talking about reach and frequency. Oh, we got some soothsayers over here. Okay, great. So this is the scope and ambition of the group. Cross-media reach and frequency. Cross-media does not mean search and display. Cross-media does not mean OTT, CTV, regular TV, addressable TV. Cross-media doesn't mean like iPad, Android. It means every single impression. Frequency management and sales outcomes are, if I'm since I'm the president of the fan club now, if I'm using Ginny's now next near, or now near next, don't say never, then this is probably the next. This is the North Star. Obviously, TV and digital media, as I said before, all impressions in scope. Tagless continuous data capture, which is to say, as a marketer, I think many of us have some PTSD of trying to ask a question and then saying, oh, but did we pay someone for the study and then set it up and then tag everything that we needed to and actually predefine what we wanted to learn before we actually knew what we could have learned? Otherwise, we can't answer that question. So again, the goal here is to have a continuous system that you can query. Obviously privacy safe, and I think we are all seeing the writing on the wall for what privacy safe is starting to mean, not only around the world, but also here in the US and state by state, so that's a big concern. And then common, comparable metrics and measurement. I think the thing that's important on this bullet point, all advertisers are different. And you know, someone said, you know, every brand in Unilever wants something different. At EA, we reorg yearly, and so every new head of media wants something different for even the same brand. And it's complicated, and we're not seeking to standardize how these questions are asked or what data is available, more so understanding that my business is not ever going to look like a pure play e-com business, is not ever going to look like a Disney Parks type of business. And knowing that, how can we build a system that still satisfies advertiser needs? In addition to that, I'll say the things that I'm really proud of about this initiative and that I think are important to note are being advertiser-led. I've been on every side of the industry. I've worked at trade organizations, startups, tech companies, agencies. I started out at AT&T and now I'm back at a brand. And left to our own devices, the industry comes back with really sophisticated solutions that are like 70% done, or work across their walled garden, or answer kind of the question you asked them, but that's not really what you wanted to know, but it's good enough. Or again, the goalposts are moving and don't exist and the roadmap is changing. Our hypothesis is, what if we created an initiative that was actually led by the ultimate customer of the work? What if we convened a group of advertisers so that everyone in the industry is not trying their best to outsmart your competitor and figure out what we want? What if we could just tell you what we want? I think it's really important that we have maintained marketer and advertiser at the nucleus of this initiative. It gives us a place to come back and turn around and say, oh, that's really clever, but wait, did that answer the question? Did that satisfy the goal? So that's one thing. The second thing is the very impetus of this initiative is to bring together a bunch of friendly competitors in a room and have them work on this issue together. And I think that's really unique, especially in digital. And it's pretty unique outside of digital as well. We've had a lot of good, important work between walled gardens, publishers, et cetera, really trying to crack these issues from multiple perspectives. And so I think that's also an important piece of the work that I'd like to highlight. Third, less relevant for this room perhaps, but super relevant for me, the work is global. Another pain point of trying to advertise in more than 35 markets is I can't go to 35 measurement meetings. This is a place where we are trying to have a global framework. We obviously know there will be local nuance and flexibility, but provide as much guidance as we can on a global level to make this conversation something that we all can engage in and also use to check back that we're building towards the right thing. So that's kind of the North Star of the entire initiative. So what we did is assembled, I was going to say a small group. I'm laughing because the group's not small, but if you think of it as a representation of the industry, it's very small. But what we tried to do was assemble a small, nimble group or task force that was pretty representative, where we could get to some quick work. For those of you not familiar with the WFA, the World Federation of Advertisers, it's a global reaching marketer association. Local marketer associations are members of the WFA. So the ANA, for example, is a member of the WFA. So we have a core group, which are advertisers, and by proxy, advertisers associations in local countries who speak for the advertisers or the demand in their country. Agencies and media partners, measurement companies, and then standards and other trades. When we started to build this group and think about the work, obviously we're not crazy, and we had to acknowledge that people have been trying to solve this problem for probably 20 to 30 years, if not more. And the intention was not to come in here new, say, hey, we're the WFA, we've got a great idea, write it down on a piece of paper and expect that that is the industry framework. Rather, what we sought to do was really lessen the pain on marketers from engaging in all of these work streams that already exist and seeing how we could tie them together in a meaningful way and what frameworks we could take globally to help accelerate this work in a way that was helpful and positive to marketers. So the first thing we did was we spent all summer on the phone doing a listening tour of every single initiative within cross-media measurement that exists across countries, also known as the Summer of Sadness for some of us. So just very quickly to prove to you that we did some homework, we heard from France, Germany, the Netherlands, UK, many, many things going on in the US together. And we did that feeling good that we did some due diligence, that we tried to learn enough of what was out there to really figure out what the best way forward was. What the listening tour due diligence told us were that advertisers and/or platforms and/or research companies were really doing their best to wield their power in very specific areas. Google would be involved in some countries, Facebook was involved in different countries, agencies were involved in different initiatives. Everybody was working really, really hard, heads down to solve this in a very disconnected way. So we knew we needed to unify that, as I said before. There was not an aligned view, excuse me, between platforms on digital side, census integrations and how those could and should work. Display media was not in scope anywhere. We have been so romanticized by video that we quickly zeroed in on that. TV data availability and the format of TV data is wildly different country to country, and very dissimilar to digital. And there's no user level data available. So we decided that in order to try to make progress on what a framework could potentially look like, we should divide ourselves into working groups and try to outline the big issues that we've seen through the listening tour. These probably don't surprise anyone in here. They're pipe work, which is to say, we asked for a lot. Is it even technically possible? Privacy, I hope that goes without explaining at this point. Metrics and data, we've got into several really fun, healthy therapeutic discussions about metrics and data, and if we should force standardization or not, and governance as well, which is, okay, if we set a system up, there has to be a mechanism such that marketers can trust it. So I'll just quickly go through some of the considerations under these groups. Right after me, I think we are going to get into a discussion on pipe work, which actually, pipe work seems to be a macro issue that encompasses all of these issues underneath it anyway. So again, please ask them your tough questions. So governance. Obviously, we need a neutral, independent, objective way to govern it. Fair representation across the ecosystem. It can't be digital governance that we then slam down and force on top of TV or vice versa. That doesn't work. Transparent, and also what's the funding model and what do the commercials look like for standing up a global governance system for something like that. Metrics and data. So again, probably can't say this enough. All impressions are in scope here. I made up a new acronym while I was making my slides. BYFM, bring your favorite metric. So again, the goal is to have as much and as granular data as possible represented here without saying you are limited to this definition of an impression, or you have to use this new standard, or you have to be a big fan of duration weighting. And again, these are the type of data flows that we envision being a part of this system. And there are big considerations as well, market by market, on data availability, granularity. Again, privacy comes into play here as well. Privacy, so consent. Obviously, thinking about protecting users against re-identification. Huge governance piece around privacy as well as compliance. And then I think this has 2 slides for pipe work. But again, how might we create a system where we can effectively measure and marry TV and digital? Coming back to the viewpoint that as our North Star, a marketer wants to understand what is my audience exposure, what is my audience penetration and frequency across both of these platforms. Always on reach and frequency management, of course, and independent and transparent as well. So there's also thinking, well, what data is available given privacy concerns? How do we calibrate against that, and what does that look like market by market? These are some big conversations and workshopping that we've had on these key points. Obviously aligning to, we'll need a panel as a truth set. Some markets, such as the US, are much further down the road with TV data, of course, and will heavily rely on return path data. And in some markets, that's not as available, and will then kind of flip, and that will supplement the panel. And publisher log data as well. Okay, so where are we? I think, is this what's in the packet? Yes, okay, fantastic. So you can read now. You get a draft, you get a draft, you get a draft. We have a draft ready of the global marketer principles, measurement principles from the WFA. Obviously, we are circulating for comment, and this is the overarching manifesto, I think was said earlier, that we encourage these initiatives country by country to fall under. And this is issued ahead of our proposed tech framework. But at the same time, we are still parallel pathing, again, the upcoming discussion on pipe work, but we are parallel pathing how we connect to these things, what it could potentially look like. The really fun, healthy therapeutic conversations that we're having right now. Privacy, there is a very clear written bar, and some businesses are gonna want to deviate from that. There's a spirit of the law versus letter of the law, and how do we think about privacy, and how do we think about privacy in a future state, and what does that mean for how we build? Frequency and performance in audience cohorts model. So if we walk away from individual granular one-to-one everything connected through all platforms, and we were to do something like a cohort model, are we actually able to satisfy our North Star of frequency management, for example? How do we connect ID systems? Is it a central ID, a common ID, a virtual ID? And again, a huge one, maybe less for this room, but globally, market data availability. And not only, I think, market data availability, but market data granularity is a big one as well. Ah, yes. So I said yes because I've been over time for a little bit. But that was my overview. Again, we are still heavy in the pipework discussions. We are having workshops to do that. You'll hear more from the panel after me, but really what I want you to take away from this isn't necessarily an initiative to think we are smarter than the past 30 years of measurement and we're just going to come lay down a solution and everyone needs to adopt it. More so that the importance of this is that we're bringing together collaborators from different areas who've not been able to work together before under the North Star of what does a marketer need to drive business forward. All right, that's all. Thank you.